The Middle East is once again a tinderbox of tension. Recent events have pushed the region closer to a wider conflict. Israel has launched airstrikes against Hezbollah targets in Lebanon, amidst ongoing violence between Israel and Hamas in Gaza. The situation is deeply concerning. Fears of a dangerous escalation could engulf the region. Hezbollah, backed by Iran, is a powerful force in Lebanon. It has a long history of conflict with Israel. The international community is watching closely. Many are calling for de-escalation and peace. Israel claimed it had no choice but to act swiftly. The specter of a wider regional conflict looms large. All sides must show restraint to prevent escalation. Israel claims its strikes against Hezbollah were entirely preemptive. They maintain that the strikes were necessary to prevent an imminent attack. Israeli officials say they received credible intelligence reports. These reports indicated Hezbollah was preparing a large-scale rocket attack. The IDF targeted key Hezbollah military infrastructure. These included rocket launchers, weapons depots, and command centers. The strikes were concentrated in southern Lebanon. This area is considered a Hezbollah stronghold. Israel claims it took every precaution to avoid harming civilians. However, the strikes have drawn criticism from some international observers. Critics question the legality of launching a preemptive strike. They argue such actions risk escalating the conflict. The Israeli government remains resolute in its assertion that it acted to protect its people. This incident has reignited the debate over preemptive military force. Hezbollah wasted no time responding to Israel's airstrikes. The group launched a barrage of rockets into Israeli territory. The rockets targeted Israeli military positions and border towns. The attacks were a clear demonstration of Hezbollah's ability to strike back. Hezbollah's leader, Hassan Nasrallah, delivered a fiery speech following the Israeli strikes. He vowed to avenge the deaths of Hezbollah fighters. Nasrallah condemned Israel's actions. He called them an act of aggression against Lebanon. Hezbollah's rockets caused damage to some buildings in Israel. However, there were no reports of casualties. Israel responded to the rocket fire with additional airstrikes on suspected Hezbollah targets in Lebanon. This back-and-forth exchange of fire underscores the dangerous cycle of violence that has gripped the region. The international community condemned both Israel's initial strikes and Hezbollah's retaliation. The UN Security Council held an emergency meeting to discuss the situation. World leaders called for an immediate ceasefire. They urged both sides to show restraint and engage in dialogue. However, the situation on the ground remains extremely tense and volatile. Section 4. The world reacts, calls for calm and restraint. The international community reacted with alarm to the renewed violence between Israel and Hezbollah. World leaders issued urgent calls for calm and restraint. The United States, a staunch ally of Israel, expressed concern over the escalation. However, they also acknowledged Israel's right to defend itself. France, Russia, and other countries condemned the violence. They urged both sides to return to the negotiating table. The United Nations Security Council convened an emergency meeting to address the crisis. The UN Secretary General called for an immediate ceasefire. He emphasized the need for a diplomatic solution to prevent further bloodshed. The European Union expressed deep concern over the situation. They called for an end to the hostilities. The EU emphasized the need to protect civilian lives and infrastructure. They called for all parties to respect international law. Despite the international pressure, a ceasefire remained elusive. Both Israel and Hezbollah seem determined to continue their military operations. The international community is actively engaged in diplomatic efforts to de-escalate the situation. The focus is on bringing both parties back to the negotiating table. However, the path to peace remains fraught with obstacles. Section 5. The precarious path forward, diplomacy or disaster. The situation in the Middle East remains extremely precarious. The recent violence between Israel and Hezbollah has raised fears of a wider regional conflict. The involvement of Hezbollah, with its close ties to Iran, adds a dangerous dimension to the conflict. There is a real risk that the situation could spiral out of control. The international community is acutely aware of the risks. Diplomatic efforts are underway to mediate between the parties. The goal is to find a peaceful and lasting solution. However, the path to peace is littered with obstacles. Mistrust between Israel and Hezbollah runs deep. The two sides have a long history of conflict. Finding common ground will be extremely challenging. The involvement of external actors such as Iran further complicates the situation. The international community must remain actively engaged. Diplomacy is the only way to prevent further bloodshed and suffering. A failure to find a peaceful resolution could have catastrophic consequences for the region and beyond. The world is watching, hoping for a de-escalation. The future of the Middle East may depend on it.